Okay, so has God given you a promise that has not been fulfilled yet, or you're in the waiting, whatever it is? I want to talk to you about Abraham and what he did when God had promised him a son. So I'm just going to kind of paraphrasing. We're in Genesis here, but the whole story, Abraham had been promised a son, and the descendants would come from him. And him and Sarah, they're like getting really impatient. So then Sarah gives Hagar to Abraham to have a child for her, through her, thinking with their own fleshly wisdom that that's what God meant. And that's not what God meant. And God's like, no, Sarah, it's going to come from you. But obviously, Sarah and Hagar didn't get along because she obviously got pregnant and had a baby boy, Ishmael, and gets mad, sends her into the wilderness. God sends her back because God says, I see you, go back. And then at this point, Abraham is trying to do everything on his own by this point. Yeah, he knows that God promised him things, but he's in the midst of it trying to just mess it up, by his own fleshly wisdom, and not. It's like he did trust God, but the action showing he was trying to take it into his own hands with the promise that God had promised. And so he would just take it in his own hands. I'm guilty of that sometimes when I get a word from the Lord and then I'm like, thank you, God, let me take it from here. I feel like that's kind of what Abraham did, as well. And I am really trying to just trust no matter what. That's actually the song that came to my mind as soon as I woke up this morning was Trust and Obey. But what I wanted to also touch on is the consequences of taking things on your own. So then once Isaac, which was the son of Sarah and Abraham, once he had grown, she's like, hey, he's going to be the only heir here. And so then he ends up sending Hagar and Ishmael out in the wilderness, gives bread, water. It greatly distressed him. He did not want to do that, but he literally sent them out into the wilderness. Because Sarah was mad. She didn't want him to be the heir of everything. And God said, listen to Sarah, And so Abraham had to send his child and Hagar out into the wilderness with just food and water to live. I can't imagine the stress that put him under, but he would not have had to have that stress if he would have just obeyed God to begin with and tried not to take it into his own hands. And then whenever, I think he had to learn a lot through that, knowing, the trust of God and how to trust him and not take anything in his own hands. But then when God said, go sacrifice your son Isaac, I can't even imagine that either. Your only son, go sacrifice him. And the whole time, Abraham's like, God, you're going to provide. Because he literally just promised him again right before that, through Isaac, the descendants will come. So he knew what God said. He knew that the descendants were going to come through Isaac. Isaac was not going to die. But then God asked him to sacrifice him on the altar and had him bound, the knife in his hand. And then the ram got caught in the thicket. And then God provided a sacrifice suitable. And that whole story just boggles me, like the importance of obedience and trust. Trust in the promise. Don't try to figure it out on your own, what it's going to look like, how you're going to get there. Just trust. Just trust. Every step he will let you know, because when we take it into our own hands, we make messes that are not good. They make things a lot harder than if we are just to be patient and trust God. So that was just kind of the lesson for today. I hope that that has resonated with you as you reflect back on your promise, what God has promised you. And I want to know, what has God promised you? If you feel comfortable, if you feel God leading you to let me know what that is, put it in the comments. I want to know, what promise are you waiting on? And in the meantime, jump over on my website, onetruefocus.com. You can get some free resources, some books, devotionals, also for purchase as well. So have a good day and God bless.